Hey guys, welcome to the channel tonight. Here, we don't talk about what's familiar, we talk about the secrets buried beneath the stone floors of ancient cathedrals, the things the church doesn't want you to know. Tonight's story isn't just a journey to find the truth, but a descent into the darkest part of faith, where history is hidden behind hymns and candlelight. If you're ready, hit subscribe and turn on the bell, so you don't miss the next nights where we'll uncover the pages erased from the Bible. And if you're listening right now, leave a comment and tell me, where are you, and what time is it there? I want to know if you're listening in the daylight, or in the dark, with only the blue glow of your screen. Now, loosen your shoulders, take a deep breath, dim the lights, put on your headphones, because from this moment on, every sound around you will fade away until it's just you, me, and the words that were never meant to be spoken. Tonight, we don't talk about faith. We talk about what's been hidden behind the stone walls of the cathedral, where hymns were sung to drown out the voice of truth. You're sitting in the dark, the screen flickering blue light, and maybe you think this is just a story. But no, it all began in a real place, an old church on a hill, where they say beneath the cold stone floor lie chambers no one is allowed to enter. The night wind blows through stained glass, creating a murmur like whispered prayers. Outside, the bell tower stands silent, but inside, the air carries the scent of burnt wax and dampness, the smell of time and of things never told. They say faith is the light that guides, but that light only shines where the church allows it. Beyond that, where darkness begins, lies the place where other stories are buried. Stories the old monks call by one name only, things not meant to be known. There, every stone was placed not just to build walls, but to conceal. The statues of saints look down at you with gentle eyes, but if you stand a little longer, you'll see something else in those stone eyes. A warning, or perhaps a silent complicity. You walk through a long hallway, each brick bathed in candlelight, and it feels as if someone is watching. The air is thick, and each step echoes like the breath of the past. You may have never thought faith could have a scent, but here it does. The scent of incense, of ash, and a faint trace of fear. On the walls, murals tell the story of Christ, birth, suffering, death, and resurrection. But if you look closely, there's something strange, a section patched over, a new layer of plaster covering an old image that was erased. No one says why. Maybe it's coincidence, or maybe it's something the church doesn't want anyone to see. In the pale, golden light, you hear footsteps from afar, not your own. A steady, unhurried rhythm echoing through this sacred space. It could be a monk on his nightly round, or it could be the shadow of someone who's been here for centuries. You hold your breath. The footsteps stop, then silence. In that moment, every sound disappears, leaving only the beat of your own heart. A thin veil separates the world of those who believe from the world of those who know. On the other side, truth is never sung into hymns. The storyteller. I have been here once, on a winter night, when the church bell rang at midnight, and the main doors creaked open as if someone was inviting me in. Inside, the last candle still burned, though cold wind slipped through every crack. I remember that feeling, the chill that seeped not just into the skin, but into the soul. And when I looked around, I realized faith here was not just a prayer. It was both the key and the lock. Everyone who came here carried a question, and for centuries the church taught them how to forget the answer. But what the church never said is that some questions can't be buried. Like seeds, they lie dormant in the dark, waiting for the day to rise again. People built cathedrals not to reach heaven, but to hide the earth. And deep beneath that earth, I found words that were never meant to be read. A young monk once said he heard whispers in the night, a voice behind the altar calling him by his real name, the name only his parents knew. When he told others, they said it was the devil's test. But in his confiscated journal, there was one shaky line. Not the devil, but a man silenced by the church itself. That story was never printed, never preached. But it exists, like cracks in the wall that can never be fully sealed. And tonight, as you sit here listening to these words, you're touching those cracks. You're stepping to the edge where faith ends and truth begins. Remember, from this point on, there's no way back. Every word you hear will pull you deeper beneath the stone floor, where the light of Scripture no longer reaches. But don't be afraid, because only by descending can we see the foundation of what was built. And sometimes that foundation wasn't laid with holiness, but with secrets. Tonight, I tell you this, not to make you lose faith, but to help you see true faith has nothing to hide. And what's been hidden may have never belonged to God at all. The night bell echoes through the air, ringing like the heavy breath of time itself. You stand before the black iron gate, rusted and old, as the heavy doors of the ancient church loom faintly through the mist. The moon is veiled by clouds, leaving only a pale blue light spilling onto the stone path, gleaming like the cold skin of the dead. The air is thick with the scent of burnt wax, damp wood, and old incense ash. From the tall bell tower above, black crows flap their wings, cawing hoarsely like the voices of restless souls. You look up, through the stained glass window, each coloured pane painted with saints in prayer, their eyes shimmering faintly in the dim moonlight, as if watching you, studying every breath you take. The wooden door before you isn't locked, only slightly ajar. A gust of cold wind whistles through the crack, carrying a distant murmur, unclear whether it's the wind singing or someone praying inside. Your fingers touch the surface of the wood, rough, cold, and damp with dew. A shiver runs down your spine, but something also pulls you forward, as if an invisible hand is urging you on. You push gently, and the door creaks open with a long, drawn-out sound that echoes through the empty nave, like a greeting from centuries past. Inside, it's darker than you expected. The faint light from outside can't pierce the thick dust layered over the windows. Only a few flickering candles burn on the altar, their pale flames trembling as if afraid. Each time the wind slips through the cracks in the wall, the flames bend and sway, casting the shadow of the crucifix across the walls, long, distorted, almost moving. The sound of wind blends with the distant ticking of an old clock, forming a sombre, steady, mournful rhythm. You step forward. Each footstep echoes against the cold stone floor, repeating itself again and again in the hollow space, as though someone were walking beside you. The air here carries the scent of centuries, melted wax, worn ceremonial fabric, and somewhere faintly, the smell of damp ash, of candles extinguished after prayers that were never answered. At the end of the corridor stands a statue of the Virgin Mary, her face serene but her eyes empty, her gaze not lifted to heaven, but staring straight at you. Her hand is outstretched, as if to stop you, or perhaps to beckon. You can't tell which. Behind the statue is a small door, almost hidden by a frayed velvet curtain. From beyond it, you hear a faint murmuring, like someone reciting prayers, but the words are twisted, not belonging to any language you know. Part of you wants to turn back, but your legs keep moving forward, as if under a spell. Beneath your feet, the white stone floor bears faint black streaks, not dirt, but the marks of time, or of something once dragged away. You kneel and touch it gently, feeling the cold radiate up, as if the stone still remembers the footsteps that once passed. You lift your gaze, candlelight flickers across the main altar. Upon it, tall candles the height of an arm drip wax in thick lines, hardened like dried blood. Between them stands a silver crucifix reflecting pale light, and behind it another wooden door, old, small, covered in a thick coat of dust, as though untouched for decades. For a moment, you think you see someone behind it, a shadow, appearing only for a second before vanishing as the flame quivers. You glance to either side. The pews are neatly aligned but all empty, yet the space is far from silent. You hear faint whispers, like hundreds praying at once, though no one is there. The sound doesn't come from human mouths, but from the very walls themselves. If you listen closely, each crack, each stone seems to breathe. A chill wind brushes the back of your neck, making you shiver. A whiff of incense drifts through the air, sweet but heavy, evoking forgotten rituals. You look around and notice something strange. Every statue faces the altar, except one. In the dark corner near the burnt-out candles, a small statue turns slightly askew, its eyes staring directly at you. The dim light makes its stone face seem alive, a faint smile curling at the corners of its lips. You step back, heart pounding. But when you look again, the statue has returned to its original position. Maybe it was the light, maybe your imagination, but deep down, you know it wasn't a trick of the mind. A sound echoes from behind, a soft knock 3 times against wood. Not random. You turn around, glancing at the main doors, still ajar, wind slipping through, carrying the fading bell from afar. The air turns icy, frozen still. And when you look back at the altar, the middle of the 3 candles has gone out. Only a thin thread of white smoke rises, curling upward into a spiral, forming a shape like an ancient letter you don't understand. You gasp, stepping backward, and just then, beneath the stone floor, you feel a faint tremor, as if something is moving below. A dry, scraping sound, like chains being dragged, echoes from deep underground. Every instinct warns you, this is not a place to linger. Yet at that same moment, you feel a pull, not physical, but spiritual, as though someone is calling you downward. The call has no words, but it's clear, echoing in your mind amid the ringing of the night bell outside. Come in, don't be afraid. This was once where it all began. You swallow hard, breath hanging in the cold air. A drop of wax falls from the last burning candle, a quiet tick, and you know, tonight, you've crossed the line no one ever comes back from. If you're brave enough, step inside. But remember, don't believe everything the priest ever told you. My voice echoes softly, blending with the sound of wind and the fading night bell, as if the church itself were listening. The heavy door behind you closes with a dull thud, making the candle on the altar flicker. In that moment, the darkness seems to thicken, wrapping around you like a cold shroud. There's no turning back now. Before you stretches a long hallway, its white stone floor now faded grey. On both sides hang ancient paintings, their edges frayed, wooden frames once ornate now covered in mould, each depicting saints, angels and demons. But there's something strange, every figure's eyes have been erased. Where once were bright, holy pupils, now only dark pits remain, like hollow voids. You stop, eyes drawn to one painting, a saint holding a newborn child. Beneath it, a faint Latin inscription can still be read. Lux mentitur, light lies. Wind seeps through the tall windows, stirring the heavy curtain crusted with wax and dust, revealing behind it a spiral staircase. The stone steps are worn and sunken, proof that many feet have passed here countless times. You touch the brass railing, cold immediately seeping into your wrist. In the flickering candlelight, you notice dark stains clinging to the stone, not moss, not water, but something thicker, darker, like blood turned brown with age. The silence here is so deep that even the beating of your heart seems to echo. I whisper slowly, in places like this, silence isn't peace. It's a sign that everything is listening. You swallow hard, gripping the railing tighter, then place your foot on the first step. The sound of your shoe striking stone is low and dense. The staircase winds downward, twisting like the entrails of some great beast. Each step a descent deeper into the past. On the walls, the light reveals faint carvings, ancient symbols, curling and tangled, looking both like writing and like drawings. Some show figures kneeling before a halo of light, others show bodies bound in chains. You don't know how old they are, but the grooves are too deep to be the work of a prank. Halfway down, you hear the sound of wind howling, but how could there be wind when you're deep inside solid stone? The sound is more human now, a murmur, like prayer, but choked midway through. You stop, tilting your head to listen. It comes again, clearer this time, and you realize it isn't coming from below, it's coming from the wall beside you. A small crack, just wide enough for candlelight to slip through, opens beside the stair. You lean close and peer inside, seeing a narrow hollow, like a sealed chamber. In that darkness, you see something moving slowly, like a hand dragging itself along the wall. A cold draft blows out, making your candle flicker violently, almost dying. When the light steadies, the hollow is empty, but on the wall where you'd been looking, a new mark appears, a handprint, wet and fresh, pressed from the inside. You gasp, stepping back. The sound of your movement ripples through the stairs, like a sigh from the stone itself. I speak softly, voice even but low. Don't be afraid. Every old church hides something, and most of what they hide lies underground. You move forward. The staircase ends at a narrow iron door, rusted, its heavy lock broken. You push gently, and it opens with a long creak, like a groan. A small chamber appears, low ceiling, thick walls, only a stone table and a candle stand, long extinguished. Everything is covered in dust except for one thing, the book on the table. It's already open, its pages yellowed, but in the center, the words are still clear. Si queris veritatem, descende. If you seek the truth, descend. You glance around. There's no other way out. Just the sealed room. But when your hand touches the table, a faint rumble stirs beneath your feet, and the slab of stone at the center of the floor begins to move slowly, as if revealing a mouth. A rush of air rises up, smelling of mold, ash, and rusted iron, so strong you have to cover your mouth. The dim candlelight spills downward, revealing another staircase, smaller, darker, leading deep into the earth. I whisper, my voice almost fading into the wind. If you still wish to know what they've hidden, then from here, you won't just be listening anymore. You'll be stepping into the very place where faith first began to crack. Below, a sound rises, a steady, deep, slow pulse. Not a heartbeat, but as if the earth itself were breathing. You don't know why, but your feet begin to move on their own. You lower your head, take a breath, and start descending. Every step is a choice. Every echo a reminder that once you go deeper, you're no longer just a listener, you've become a witness. And tonight, the things the church never wanted you to know are about to be uncovered beneath your very feet. The smell of burning wax mixes with the thick dampness in the air, as if every breath you take is stealing a little of the candle's life. The faint light from the single candle in your hand casts shadows on the mottled stone walls, where moss clings like old wounds. The deeper you go, the more you feel that the air here isn't just cold, it has weight, like an invisible veil pressing down on your shoulders, slowing your heartbeat. Each step you take echoes through the corridor, then fades, as though swallowed by something unseen. Above you, the arched ceiling is cracked, flakes of old paint falling and mingling with drifting dust to form a thin mist. Then you notice something strange. There is no wind here at all, yet the flame in your hand keeps swaying, as if someone were breathing right beside you. You stop and listen. No human sound. Only the faintest noise, a tiny crack ahead, like warped wood bending in the damp, or the sound of joints moving. From somewhere distant comes the steady drip of water, rhythmic like a ticking clock counting down. You swallow hard, your breath shortening, and when you look again, you see the nearest statue, St. Michael, standing farther away than before. Impossible. You're sure it was only a few steps from you when you entered. Now its shadow stretches long, spilling across your face, making the candle tremble in your hand as if about to die. The statue's face is finely carved, its stone eyes cold, yet the reflection of the flame gives them life. Watching you, unblinking. A drop of hot wax lands on your hand, stinging, pulling you back from the haze. You blink, and the statue is back where it was. Maybe you imagined it, maybe not. At the end of the corridor, a small doorway stands open. The air spilling out is so cold your breath turns white. You move closer, your hand trembling as you push the door. Inside is a circular room, only a few meters wide, with a high domed ceiling. Wooden benches line the walls, covered in such thick dust that when you enter, the whole room seems to exhale. On the walls hang dozens of crucifixes, but no two are alike. Some are broken, some pieced together from bone, some forged from rusted iron. In the center stands a low altar, and upon it, a tall candle the height of a person burns halfway down. Its flame is eerily still, not flickering, not wavering as if enclosed within invisible glass. You approach and notice the smell isn't normal. It isn't beeswax or sacred oil, it's the faint, acrid scent of burning flesh. On the candle's base, dark streaks run down, as though something once wrapped around it and melted with the flame. A small book lies beside it, its blackened leather cover bearing two faint Latin words, Silentium Dei, the silence of God. You open it gently. The first page is blank, save for a faded black handprint in the corner. Turning a few more pages, you find uneven, frantic lines scrawled in red ink, some blurred by tears or blood. The first sentence translates to, "They do not pray for souls, they bind them." Your heart tightens. On the next page, in the corner, there's a strange mark, a kind of seal. When you touch it, you realize it isn't ink, but a deep carving into the leather itself. Each stroke trembles, as if made by a hand shaking with fear. You lift your gaze, and the candlelight shifts color. The flame turns from yellow to orange, then red. In that glow, the shadows of the crucifixes begin to move, intertwining across the walls like desperate hands reaching for each other. A cold gust escapes from nowhere. You turn around. The door has closed on its own, the iron latch dropping with a heavy clang. The room falls silent. No dripping water, no wind, only the pounding of your heart and the faint hiss of the burning candle. You step back, eyes locked on the altar, and then you realize what's melting at the base of the candle isn't just wax. It's the trace of human fingers, as if someone once tried to grasp the flame with bare hands. The smell of burnt flesh thickens, and you hear a faint moan, thin as breath, rising from beneath the altar. You kneel, raising the candle to the dark space below. No one there. Only a small hole, carved deep into the stone floor, where a dark liquid drips slowly. Each drop falls, merging with the shadow reflected in your eyes. In that instant, you feel someone standing right behind you. Cold breath brushes the back of your neck. A voice whispers, soft and even, "No one prays here." They only repeat the words to keep the silence. You whirl around, nearly dropping the candle, but no one is there. Only the stained wall, and faint words scratched into it by fingernail. "Those who seek God must first be lost." The letters tremble, carved in pain. You look back at the altar. The Silentium Dei has closed by itself, and a fresh wet handprint now marks its cover. The tall candle in the center of the room suddenly goes out. In the absolute darkness, you hear only your own breath, and beneath it, a distant murmur, like hundreds of voices chanting a prayer you cannot understand. You want to scream, but your throat locks tight. The whispering merges into a single phrase, echoing in your skull like sound carved into stone. Silence is the final prayer. You realize you've gone too far from the light, and now, there is only the smell of burnt wax, the damp rot of time, and the suffocating silence, the kind even God no longer answers. This place was once a library of forbidden scriptures, where the church hid the pages that spoke of the power of mankind, not of God. As you pass through the final narrow doorway of the corridor, the musty air grows heavier, as though you've opened a gate leading down into the buried memory of the world. Ahead lies a spiral stone staircase, thick with dust and cobwebs, descending into a depth no one has ever spoken of. Each step echoes, rippling through the darkness like the sigh of trapped souls. The candle in your hand trembles, its light flickering over rough walls inscribed with faded words, broken, but still legible enough for you to recognize familiar Latin phrases. Evangelium Mariae, Liber Veritatis, the Gospel of Mary, the Book of Truth. Those names no longer exist in today's Bible. They were burned, banned, erased. But here, they still live. In silence, in shadow, in the breath of cold stone. When you reach the last step, a vast chamber opens before you. It is no longer a church, no longer a place of prayer. This is a place of books, manuscripts, scrolls bound in iron, stacked in towers reaching the ceiling. At the center stands a great reading table of black stone, scattered with quills long dried from centuries past. The ceiling drips water in slow rhythm, each drop mixing with dust and ash to form a thin film of mud on the floor. In a far corner, a broken crucifix leans sideways, never repaired. Its shadow stretches across the floor, like a fracture in space itself. You feel this place isn't abandoned, only waiting. From behind you, I, the narrator, speak softly, my voice low, afraid to wake something that still listens. There are scriptures that were never meant to be read in the light, because light, sometimes, is what makes them disappear. You approach a low shelf. Beneath layers of dust, you find a cracked leather-bound journal sealed with broken wax. The cover bears hand-carved words, Contra Ecclesiam, against the church. Your hands tremble, yet you open it. The smell of decayed paper and damp rushes up, dizzying. On the first page, trembling words are scrawled, as if written in fear. Whoever reads this, know that there are two gods, one of man and one of power. You stand still. The candlelight dances on the page, making the words seem aflame. At the bottom corner, a dark brown stain. You don't want to think what it is, but the faint scent of iron lingers. Turning the next pages, you find writings of lost teachings. That the human soul needs no forgiveness, for it has never sinned. That heaven is not a reward, but the awakening of the mind recognizing itself as part of the Creator. There are ancient drawings, symbols resembling forbidden rites, and familiar names written in distorted forms. Magdalene, Thomas, Judas, all penned in different hands, as if many had continued this book across centuries, passing it secretly from one to another. Between the lines, some sections have been scraped away, leaving thin scars. Yet when you tilt the candlelight, faint words still emerge. In tenebris lucet veritas. In darkness, the truth shines. A soft sound stirs from the far shelves. Perhaps a book fell, yet you feel the unmistakable chill of air brushing past you. There is no wind underground. You turn, the candles glow trembling across the wall, and for a heartbeat, you see the shadow of a man in a monk's robe standing in the aisle, his back to you. The shadow doesn't move, doesn't breathe, doesn't tremble. Then, in an instant, it's gone. You want to leave, but your hand moves on its own, turning another page. In the center, no words, only a large circle carved with 6 ancient symbols, and below, a single Latin line. Qui legunt meminerint, scriptum est in sanguine. Those who read, remember, this was written in blood. The phrase echoes in your mind, each word striking like a heartbeat. Your throat tightens, your chest pounding so hard you can hear it. You glance around, the shelves seem to shift, scrolls sliding free, unrolling into the air like broken wings. Some fall onto the black table, opening on their own, revealing drawings of bound, gagged figures, and beneath them the inscription, Custodes Veritatis, keepers of the truth. Those who were killed for reading. You realize this library holds more than forbidden knowledge. It is the graveyard of those who sought it. Each book here is a trapped soul, lingering between worlds. You can feel their breath, cold and close against your neck. From the distance comes the sound of chains dragging, of air whistling through cracks in the stone, and then a deep voice rising from the dark. We wrote to be remembered, but they turned memory into sin. The whole chamber shudders, dust falling from the ceiling, the candle in your hand flickering violently. You step back, your foot striking something hard, a small stone altar half buried in the floor. Upon it, an inscription carved in ancient Greek reads, "The Library of the Burned." You know you shouldn't stay, but something within you, deeper than fear, urges you to remain a little longer. Because as you look around, among the piles of dust-covered books, you notice one of them is new. Its leather still warm, resting among the relics of the dead. You reach out and touch it. The title is written in Latin, but the last line is in modern script, hastily scrawled, Evangelium Novum, the new gospel, written for the one reading it right now. Your heart stops. The scent of burning wax fills the air, the candle's light flares bright for an instant, and you understand, this place isn't just a library of the past. It is still writing, breathing through your curiosity, through your breath. You've become part of it. In the 4th century, as the fires of the Roman Empire began to fade, it was said that God chose mankind to redeem the world. But in that same era, dozens of gospels were thrown into the flames, erased from every official scripture. Not because they were wrong, but because they spoke of what the church could not accept, that Jesus once laughed, once feared, and once stood against the very power that claimed to speak in his name. When you open one of those ancient scrolls, the dust that rises isn't just the ash of time, it's the final breath of thoughts once strangled. The candlelight glows across the handwritten letters, ink turned brown red and dry for 1,000 years. The first line, written in ancient Greek, reads, Ho anthropos theos estin, man is divine. Below it, a Latin note, verbum hoc ignem accendet, this word will ignite fire. And indeed, it did ignite the fiercest flame in the history of faith, the fire that burned knowledge and those who dared to write differently. I speak slowly, my voice low. In the year 325 amperes, D, the Council of Nicaea was convened. They said it was to unify belief, but in truth, it was to choose which stories could control the people. Everything else, the words of Jesus about humanity, about women, about freedom, was erased. You lean closer, peering at the half-scratched text. The candlelight reveals a few Latin words almost carved away. Risus Christi, the laughter of Christ. I continue. There was a record, said to be from Thomas, claiming that Christ laughed on the cross. Not in mockery, but in understanding that the flesh would die, but the consciousness of man could not be killed. That idea that mankind needs no intermediary to reach God was the greatest threat to any church. You turn another fragile page, paper so thin it seems a breath could break it. It describes secret gatherings of forgotten disciples, those never recognized, recording his words in their own way, simple and deeply human. He said, "I am not a king, I am the Son of Truth. And so are you." Those words are in no New Testament you've ever known. Instead, they were replaced with teachings of obedience, of fear, of sin. Along the page's edge, a small drawing, a circle surrounded by 7 stars, with an open hand in the center, the symbol of the one who carries light within. Below it, a trembling line reads, "They call me heretic, only because I said God is not in temples but in every heart." You read it again and again, your chest tightening, filled with both fear and understanding. Because in that moment, you realize what was burned was not just paper, but the idea that humanity could free itself from the chains of faith. From afar the wind rises again, stirring the flame and casting the shadows of the scrolls against the wall. On that wall, faint carvings begin to reveal themselves, perhaps brought to life by the flicker of light. Words not found in any Bible, but carved long ago by human hands. He who writes God's name on stone will lose his soul, for God does not wish to be contained. My voice lowers to a whisper near your ear. Do you hear it? Every religion begins with one who believes, and ends with an institution afraid of losing that belief. A sound breaks the stillness, a small dry crack, like a bone snapping. You turn, seeing a scroll fall from a high shelf. It unrolls across the floor, revealing a long passage written in ancient Aramaic, the language once spoken by Christ. Beneath the words are 2 figures kneeling before the light. But that light doesn't fall from heaven, it shines from within them. You look closer and see a small flame drawn in each of their eyes. I go on. The Gospels that were cast out of Mary, of Judas, of Philip, all spoke the same truth, that mankind need not fear. But the Church understood if man does not fear, he will no longer need to be led. The air around you thickens. Each breath grows heavier, every faint sound echoing back. Then, from a far corner, a whisper low, steady, neither male nor female, near yet far, a voice speaking in a tongue you don't know, but that feels hauntingly familiar. You realize you're hearing it not with your ears, but within your mind. And then, an image appears inside your head. A man in a white robe, half his face covered by cloth, eyes kind yet deep, staring straight through time at you. He says nothing, only gestures toward the open pages, urging you to keep reading. The candle brightens suddenly, revealing the walls around you, hundreds of lines carved over one another. Prayers, confessions, curses, all merging into one message. They wanted us to forget that we were once free. My voice now sounds distant, echoing through the chamber. The 4th century burned these writings, but it could not burn their meaning. They were buried, hidden, passed from storyteller to listener, from dreamer to dreamer, until they reached you. And now, as you read these words, as you hear my voice, as your heart beats a little faster, you've become part of the next keepers of memory. You don't know why your hand keeps turning the page. A small fragment slips free, so old it nearly crumbles to dust. On it are only 3 words. Non times lucem, do not fear the light. But light here is no longer salvation. It's what once burned everything away. You exhale, your arms trembling, breathing in the scent of scorched leather, of ash, of paper, and somewhere within it, the fading scent of old faith decaying. The Gospels that were burned never died. They've only been waiting for someone brave enough to read them again. And tonight, that person is you. You hear the sound of pages turning in the cold air, fragile as the breath of someone dying. An ancient scripture lying on the stone table opens by itself, though there is no wind. The cracked leather cover, the edges of the paper scorched, and beneath the thick dust of centuries, the letters slowly emerge. No author's name, no introduction. The first page holds only a single line, written in red ink long dried. Truth does not rest upon the altar. The words cut quietly, like a small knife, piercing through the silence, making the chamber fall 1 degree deeper into stillness. You lean closer, bringing the candle near. Just below that line, someone has written in a different hand, trembling, as if in fear. Those who read this will never pray the same way again. The ink has bled, yet it feels freshly written, as if only yesterday. You turn the next page, hearing the dry paper brush together, faint as a serpent sliding over stone. Ancient characters appear, mingling Greek and Latin, as though this was not one book, but a merging of many remnants. At the center of the page, a drawing of an oil lamp, but its flame does not rise upward. It points down, illuminating the ground, where the words are carved. The sacred fire does not come from heaven. I speak softly, my voice almost whispering beside your ear. The one who wrote this did not wish to defy faith. They sought only to find where true faith began in the heart, not in power. The candle flickers, your shadow stretches across the wall, merging with the carved marks around you. Now you see them clearly, lines of text half chiseled away, as if someone tried to erase them but lacked the courage to finish. Some you can still read: Corpus Veritatis, Filius Hominis, Ignis Interior, the body of truth, the Son of Man, the inner fire. Each phrase a fragment from a greater whole. You feel as though something unseen is guiding you not by voice, but through the invisible gaze of those very words. You turn a few more pages. A longer passage, written in black ink, more deliberate, more certain than the rest. There are things that must not be spoken within the church walls, for if they were, those who kneel would rise, and those who preach would fall to their knees. At the bottom, a faint seal, an open eye with a sun at its center, the rays drawn inward instead of outward, as if absorbing the light instead of shining it. You touch it, and the stone beneath your hand chills instantly. A faint metallic sound echoes iron scraping against stone. You look up. At the far end of the crypt, where the candlelight does not reach, a small door begins to open on its own. It creaks, slowly, as though pulled by the hand of time. Inside is a smaller room, narrow, holding only a low stone table and a broken wooden chair. On the wall, dozens of aged papers are pinned by nails, layered over each other like a wall of silence. Each bears the same line: not to be read aloud. You step closer, touch the first sheet. It tears easily, like dry skin. Behind it, hidden text appears: verbum mortis est vivum. The word of death still lives. You step back. In that moment, something moves behind you. A breath brushing your neck, faint, cold, and very near. You turn, but only emptiness greets you, and the faint crackle of the candle. I continue, voice hoarse. They say this scripture was once found by a monk in the ashes after the church burned the forbidden Gospels. He read it for 7 days, and on the 8th, he could no longer speak. He only wrote, only bled, until blood replaced ink. You glance down, seeing dark red stains dried along the table's edge, trailing down the stone floor. Beneath it, carved by hand in uneven lines: I have seen God, and he looks more like me than I ever thought. A simple sentence, yet it carries a storm. For if God resembles man, then what is the church? And if truth lies within man, then who is lying? A drop of wax falls onto the page, spreading like fresh blood. You hear a sound uncertain if it's laughter or weeping rising from below the floor, from the very ground beneath your feet. Suddenly, you realize the floor isn't stone at all, but a massive tomb slab, the name faintly carved upon it. Anonymous Scriptorem, the anonymous writer. I whisper slowly, almost in prayer. The one who wrote this may be buried here, but their truth still lives. because nothing written in blood can ever be buried. Your heart beats faster, unsure if from fear or fascination. The candle trembles. Your shadow flickers across the walls, mingling with that of another figure. But when you turn, there's only emptiness. The smell of old ink, wax, and damp earth thickens, heavy enough to choke. You bend once more toward the open page, where the first red words remain. Truth does not rest upon the altar. But now, under the candle's heat, new letters appear written in invisible ink, revealed only by flame. It rests in the hands of those who dare to turn the page. You freeze. Your hand still rests upon the paper, fingertip brushing the edge of the next leaf. The air seems to stop, and for a moment you hear your own heartbeat blend with a distant voice rising from deep within the crypt. Quiet, but distinct. You've begun. Now continue. The scripture quivers slightly, as if breathing. And you know you've just turned to the chapter no one ever dared to read. The texts burned during the time of Nicaea carried teachings unlike any other. That man could save himself without the church as an intermediary. Those words now survive only in tattered copies, transcribed by the trembling hands of monks who dared to betray silence. And now, you stand in the crypt where those fragments were once hidden, where every page is a confession that was never absolved. The candlelight in your hand glows against the stone ceiling, illuminating ancient inscriptions carved into the walls. Each line is a crack where light leaks through the wall of deceit. I speak slowly, my voice rough, echoing from afar. They called that time the Council of Nicaea, a gathering of men who believed they had the right to define God. They sat in grand halls filled with light, draped in silk robes, arguing over the divinity and humanity of Jesus, while outside, thousands of other gospels were gathered and thrown into fire. Their ashes rode the wind, falling on the heads of people who never knew what they had just lost. You picture it. Piles of burning manuscripts, flames reflecting on the faces of priests, trembling and yet satisfied. Some said that night, the smell of burning parchment reached the sea, and the fire burned for 7 days and nights. A young monk, who had copied part of the Liber Veritatis, watched from afar. In his journal, later found among the ashes, he wrote, "When they burned the books, I saw the letters rise like red embers. They did not die. They only sought another place to hide, inside the reader's mind." You look around the crypt and begin to understand, this is not just a library, it is the final refuge of words. The Gospels never read from the altar. The forbidden teachings of freedom, the truths about the strength within humanity, all still live here, between the cold stone and the shadows. A large scroll bound in iron rests on the top shelf, different from the rest. Its seal is not a cross but an open hand, with the words Lux Intus, the light within, carved into the palm. You reach for it, and the iron bands fall away as if they had been waiting. The scroll unrolls on its own, releasing a scent of ancient smoke, of ash, of time, and of guilt. On the first page, written in bold black ink, a single line, Deus non servit ecclesiae. God does not serve the church. I laugh softly, my tone edged with sorrow. A sentence that killed so many. You continue reading, and each line tightens your chest. Man needs no mediator to find the divine. He is in their breath, their thoughts, their hands. But those who wish to rule will make them forget this. They will build walls, they will build temples, and call them the house of God. These words were not written to rebel, but to warn that faith, when turned into power, becomes a chain. Along the edges of the scroll are streaks of dried blood, tracing the letters. You can feel the haste in the writer's hand, the urgency of one racing against time. They knew that by writing these words, they were already condemned. Then, in the silence, you hear a faint whisper, like wind brushing your ear. They hid the light, not because they feared the dark, but because they feared losing the right to hold the torch. You startle, glancing around. No one. But the voice lingers in your mind, warm and sorrowful, as if it belonged to someone who lived centuries ago. You place your hand on the parchment, and as you do, an icy shiver runs down your spine. Images flood your mind. A vast chamber, dozens of monks kneeling around a table, one man standing at the center, holding a scroll identical to the one you hold now. He reads aloud, firm and unafraid, while the crowd screams in terror. They throw stones, they shout, they cover their ears. Then he is dragged away, bound, and cast into the fire with his manuscript. But before the flames touch him, he smiles and says one final line. "They will burn me, but they cannot burn my words." The vision fades. You stand still, your heart pounding, cold sweat down your back. The candle in your hand flares brighter, reacting to the memory. The light reveals new carvings on the wall, words you hadn't seen before. Nicaea non finivit fidem, solum catenam fecit. Nicaea did not end faith. It only forged the chains. You gasp, your eyes fixed on the phrase, because as you read each word, you feel something strange, as if someone else is writing with you, right now. The ink on the wall is still wet, dripping down the stone. You step back, your foot striking something hard. Looking down, you see a long iron rod lying across the floor, its head engraved with an inverted sundae, a ceremonial staff, or the tool that carved forbidden words into these walls. Whatever it is, it's still hot, as if it was used moments ago. I whisper, barely louder than breath. Perhaps they're still here. The ones who wrote the forbidden. The ones who believed that God needs no intermediaries. The air in the crypt changes. You hear the faint rustle of paper, hundreds of scrolls trembling at once, as if touched by unseen hands. Every candle, impossibly, leans toward you, casting golden light across your face. You find yourself surrounded by light, but not the light of faith. It's cold, dry, heavy like molten iron. From afar, the voice returns, clearer now, whispering by your ear. Do not trust those who call themselves the bridge. For the bridge always chooses who may cross, and who must be left behind. You shiver. An old scroll falls at your feet. You pick it up. On it, just 3 words, written in thick black ink. Ego salvabomi. I will save myself. A simple sentence, but enough to make every church tremble. And as you read it silently in your mind, the last candle goes out. The crypt plunges into total darkness. Yet somewhere, in that darkness, you feel another kind of light, small but real. It doesn't come from a candle. It doesn't fall from above. It comes from within you, as though someone has just reignited the flame that was extinguished 1,000 years ago. Faith is built on fear. He who controls sin controls the soul. The phrase echoes like an ancient curse, resounding in your mind the moment the stone door closes behind you. In the damp darkness, you begin to understand the true meaning of what was hidden. Not the scriptures, not the symbols, but the invisible mechanism that has bound humanity for thousands of years, the power built on fear. You look around and see lines carved into the walls, verses you once heard in church. But here they are, written backward, reversed, distorted into something terrifying. Under the dim glow of the last candle, you read a line, Peccatum non est, in actu, sed in timor. Sin is not in the act, but in the fear. You stop, the words sinking into your mind, unraveling everything you ever knew about sin. I, the voice still there, low and cold, speak to you. They never needed to prove God exists. They only needed to make man fear losing him. You feel a strange pressure in your chest, not from the air, but from memory itself, the times you knelt, the times you prayed, the times you begged forgiveness without ever knowing what you'd done wrong. Small sounds echo footsteps on stone, but not human ones. 3 steps, then stop. 3 more, then silence. The rhythm feels like the heartbeat of this place, slow, steady, patient. You move forward, each step pulling you farther from the world above, where fear is mistaken for reverence. Ahead of you, a great wall looms, covered in inscriptions. At its center, a relief, a man kneeling, arms raised, while above him, a massive stone hand presses down on his head. But the hand isn't divine, it's human. The sculpted fingers are rough, mortal, powerful, not holy. Beneath the carving, faint Latin words read, Dominus non timetur, sed regitur per timorem. The Lord is not feared, but ruled through fear. You trace the grooves with your hand, the cold seeping into your skin. I continue, voice like a long sigh. The Council of Nicaea didn't just choose which words to keep. they chose how to make men afraid. They knew faith couldn't be controlled, but guilt could. You notice a small doorway beside the wall, half buried beneath bricks. As you bend down, you realize it's not a door but a carving, a sealed passage. Inside lies a hollow darkness, where those who refuse to fear were once imprisoned. Scratches still mar the stone, long, sharp marks, the last traces of hands clinging to life. You don't need to imagine what happened. These were the ones who said, "We need no forgiveness for what God has already given." They were branded heretics, burned, erased, vanished from every text. But their voices remain, whispering in the cold air from the cracks in the walls. You hear it, faint so soft it might only be a feeling. They feared us because we did not fear them. The whisper seems to come from inside you, making you shiver afraid, yet strangely awakened, as though part of your soul remembers something it had long forgotten. Ahead, the candlelight catches an old mirror hanging on the wall, coated in dust. As you approach, your reflection warps, then changes. In the glass, you don't see yourself but another figure, a monk in robes, holding an iron cross. His eyes hold no faith, only fear. He's preaching, and the crowd before him kneels, trembling, weeping, begging forgiveness. He shouts, "Those who do not fear will fall into darkness." Then he turns toward you, his lips moving without sound. But you understand. He says, "I was the first to be afraid." The image fades. You step back, breath trembling. I laugh softly. They never taught you to believe in God. They taught you to fear him. Because only when you fear, you kneel. The candle hisses, wax dripping onto your hand, burning hot. You realize blood and wax share the same scent, the sharp sweetness of sacrifice. Beneath the mirror, a newer engraving catches your eye. Centuries later, when no one believed, they still feared, because fear had replaced faith. You sink to the cold stone floor, listening to your own breath merge with the silence. Every sound, every memory, every belief dissolves into stillness. And for a fleeting moment, you understand a simple truth. Fear is humanity's oldest ritual. No altar, no priest required. Only a vague promise of punishment and they will bow. I speak slowly, evenly, as though closing a chapter. When they said, "Fear the Lord," they did not know that each time they repeated it, they were worshipping those who made them afraid. You glance at the dying candle, its light swaying across the wall. Your shadow stretches long, mingling with the carved hands around you. In that moment, you can't tell if you're standing in the present or reliving the memory of those burned for daring to say, "No one has the right to make us afraid." Somewhere deep within, you hear that same voice again, low, clear, intimate, like your own thought. When mankind ceases to fear, the saints will vanish. A cold wind blows, the candle dies, and in the perfect darkness, you finally understand they never needed fire to rule, only to make you believe the dark was something to fear. Maria Magdalene. That name echoes through the darkness of the crypt like a call from the past. Not the sinful woman the scriptures condemned, not the one who washed the Lord's feet with tears and perfume, but the chosen one, the one who truly understood his teachings. On the stone table before you lies another scroll, smaller but wrapped more carefully than any before. The red wax seal is stamped with 2 interlocking circles, and at their centre, an elegant, hand-drawn M, not a symbol of the church. As you gently break the seal, a strange fragrance rises, not the scent of damp and dust, but of incense, as if the writer had infused the ink with oils to preserve their words. The first page reveals a single line in Latin, Evangelium Mariae, the Gospel of Mary. Not the one you've heard of, not the one recognized, but one of the texts erased from the New Testament in the 4th century. I whisper, my voice echoing through time itself. They called her a sinner, because they feared a woman who could understand God better than they did. You turn to the next page. The handwriting is soft, unlike the rough strokes of the other scriptures. It has rhythm, emotion, written not by hand, but by breath. In it, Mary speaks of moments when Jesus was alive, not as a symbol, but as a man capable of fear, doubt, and love. He said to me, "You understand me more than the others, because you do not see me as the Saviour, but as a human being. And only humanity can truly know the soul." You pause, feeling each word seep into you. Below that passage, another hand has written shaky, hurried. They removed this part from the scripture. They said her love was sin. I speak softly, like a sigh, and so they rewrote the story, turning her from heir to harlot. The candle flickers, lighting a faint mural on the wall. A woman kneeling beside a man, her hand upon his heart, his resting on her head, as if passing something sacred. Half the painting has been scraped away, leaving only Mary's face. In the dim glow, you see her expression not sorrowful, as in church depictions, but calm, proud, almost knowing. I continue, my voice steady and slow. After Jesus was crucified, the disciples scattered. But she, the one they called sinner, gathered the survivors, repeating his final words. Many manuscripts say she was not merely the witness to the resurrection, but the bearer of the final truth. You see a line written in ancient Greek, the ink bold and clear. He chose her because she saw the light within, not above. Below it, a smaller note, likely added later by a copyist. That is why they feared her. The wind whistles through the cracks. Another page falls to the ground, opening itself. You bend down, it's another fragment of her gospel, describing a dispute among the disciples after Jesus' death. Peter says, "How could the Lord choose a woman to understand him?" And Mary answers, "If he did, does that not mean the soul has no gender?" The words send chills down your spine. They don't sound like prayer, they sound like revelation. I whisper, soft as drifting air. The church chose Peter, not Mary, because one could build walls and the other wanted to tear them down. The candle suddenly flares, light flooding the mural, and now you see a new detail you missed before. Behind Mary, a faint halo, not golden, but pale blue-silver. On the wall, someone once wrote in charcoal, Magdalene, Sophia, Lux Interior. Mary, wisdom, the inner light. You step back. The room feels alive, breathing, as gusts of wind carry the faint echo of hundreds of women's voices chanting a hymn you do not understand. No one is praying, no one is pleading. The voices are steady, confident, filled with knowledge. I speak. They erased her name, but not her echo. Every time people pray, the part of them that truly understands God, the part that listens, not obeys, comes from her. You glance back at the scroll, where at the very end there is a faint, nearly erased line. "When I said Master," he answered. "No, Mary. When you speak, I hear my own voice." You freeze, heart racing. If those words are true, it means Jesus did not only teach salvation but reflection that within each human being resides a fragment of the divine, and that the love between Jesus and Mary was not of flesh, but of understanding and light. But that truth was too dangerous. It could bring every wall down. So they made her a sinner, to erase the idea that a woman could hold truth. My voice lowers, deep, almost prophetic. Do you know? In every ancient church, the statue of Mary Magdalene is built shorter than the other saints. But if you look beneath her feet, beneath the thick dust, you'll find a faint carving, 2 circles intertwined, and inside them, an M, the same seal as the scroll in your hands. You look up. On the wall, those circles are now glowing faintly, drawn anew by light itself. And in that moment, you understand, Mary Magdalene was never forgotten. Humanity was simply never allowed to remember. The candlelight flickers, casting tremors across the damp, cold wall, where layers of moss cling like the skin of time itself. In that wavering glow, you notice a detail you first mistook for a crack in the stone. An eye, carved deep into the wall, half hidden, half open, staring straight at you through thousands of years of silence. It is not like the eye of God you've seen in modern churches, no triangle of light, no halo, just a solid black pupil surrounded by overlapping carved rings, like ripples in water. At its center, a clean, cold chisel mark runs straight down, too deliberate to be random. You step closer, raising the candle. Around the eye, faint Latin letters emerge, hurriedly carved, nearly erased. Tilting the light, the words reveal themselves one by one. Oculus Dei intus est. The eye of God is within. I speak softly, my voice stretching through the stone. This symbol once appeared in the earliest Gospels, but they erased it, because it spoke of something dangerous, that God does not look down from heaven, but looks out from within the eyes of man. You touch the wall. It's freezing but not lifeless. Beneath the stone you feel a faint vibration, like a heartbeat pulsing slow. The wall seems to breathe, and in that instant, the candlelight reflects in the carved eye, making it seem alive. You step back, heart pounding, because the gaze feels real conscious. The flame suddenly wavers violently, though there's no wind. It leans hard to one side, casting your shadow against the wall. Your shadow aligns perfectly with the eye, making it seem as though it's staring through your body. I continue, my tone low, murmuring, "They called this symbol Oculus Veritatis, the Eye of Truth. It was once carved into ancient manuscripts, a reminder that God is not above, not in scripture, but in every breath, every glance, every choice of man. But the Church erased it. They replaced it with the symbol of power, 3 rays descending from the sky, because an eye within man could not be ruled. You look up again at the wall, where chunks of stone have been chipped away. Someone, long ago, had tried to destroy it. But why not finish? Why leave half behind? A strange realization passes through you, as if whoever carved this knew one day someone would find it. And that someone is you. The candle flickers again, revealing another detail beneath the eye. A small circle, and inside it, an open hand with the palm facing upward. In the center of the palm is a dot, connected to the pupil above by a thin line. Below, faint Greek letters barely visible. Phos, anthropos, gnosis, light, human, understanding. I speak. In that time, they believed whoever looked upon this symbol and grasped its meaning would see themselves not with the eyes, but with the spirit. But the Church called it heresy, because those who see themselves no longer need to be led. You hear the candle drip onto the floor, each drop marking time like grains in an hourglass. In the quiet, something shifts behind the wall. You're not sure if it's imagination or the soft echo of footsteps, distant, buried in stone. A faint whisper drifts through a crack. Look, but do not believe what they show you. You turn sharply. No one. Only the candle, burning low. But now the carved eye seems to be looking elsewhere. Not at you, but toward a dark corner of the crypt. You follow its gaze. Step by step, your footsteps echo softly, fading into the hollow space like the sound of memory itself. In the far corner, a half-collapsed stone frame reveals another relief, smaller, nearly buried beneath dust. You kneel, brushing away layers of ash and earth. In the dim light, a figure emerges, a woman, eyes closed, a carved eye upon her forehead. Below her, faint words nearly lost to time. Qui vide intus, vide Deum. He who looks within sees God. I whisper, almost dissolving into breath. Do you see? These are the words of Mary Magdalene, taken from the manuscript burned with her gospel. Those words once made an entire era tremble. The candlelight reflects across her face, and her closed eyes seem to open just slightly. In that instant, you hear a faint thump like a heartbeat, pulsing within stone. You step back, but cannot look away. Inside you, a feeling grows fear, yes, but also a pull. There's something in that gaze that tells you the eye is not a symbol, it's a mirror. It doesn't reflect faces, it reflects souls. You lean forward, brushing your fingers over the carving. The moment your fingertip touches the center of the pupil, the candle flares with blinding light. White radiance floods the wall, spilling back into your eyes. In that flash, visions flicker: monks kneeling by fire, burning scriptures, eyes carved out and replaced with new emblems. Then all fades, leaving only the crypt's breath heavy, deep, still. I speak softly but firm. That symbol is what they never wanted you to see, because when you realize God looks through your own eyes, you will never fear them again. You stand still. The carved eye no longer glows, yet its light lingers within your vision, etched into your memory. The candle burns low, darkness returning, but this time, you don't feel afraid. In that darkness, you can still feel the gaze, not from the wall, but from within. It follows you, lighting a flame that needs no candle, no faith, a light that knows exactly who it is. The church bells echo from afar, deep and long, like the heartbeat of a world asleep within a faith long defined for it. You stand in the crypt, the candle burned out, yet light still seeps faintly through the cracks in the wall, like the dried blood of history. Each breath carries the scent of wax, of stone, and something else, the scent of truth, suffocated. My voice rises, low and slow, drawing you back through time. When power was no longer enough to bind men with the sword, they used God. When blood stopped spilling on the battlefield, they learned to pour it into holy books. You look up. The eye carved into the wall is now just a faint groove, but its story continues, for this is the next chapter, where the sacred itself was rewritten by human hands. When the Roman Empire fell, the Church rose, not through weapons but through words. They gathered the old rituals, the ancient myths, the goddesses once worshipped for millennia, and gave them a new name: Mass. Many believed it was enlightenment, but in truth, it was erasure wrapped in holiness. The Egyptian feasts of the sun became Christmas. The Celtic harvest rites turned into All Saints' Day. The goddess Isis of Egypt, Diana of Rome, and Gaia of Greece all merged into the image of the Virgin Mary, to hide one thing, that humanity's first faith was not to the Father, but to the Mother. I speak, calm and steady. They turned the Mother into the handmaid, the Creator into the one who merely bore the Son of God. From that moment, the sacred became submission. In the corner of the wall, you see a faded mural. A woman in a blue cloak, arms open as if to shield. But under the fresh paint, a hidden image lingers. Not a cloak, but wings. Not a gentle smile, but the fierce gaze of a goddess of victory. Half the painting was scraped away, but faint beneath it you can still read the words, Mater Solis, Mother of the Sunday. My voice drifts, like wind threading through stone. Once, the pagans worshipped the sun, the symbol of life, of rebirth. When the Church came, they could not extinguish that light, so they disguised it. They called the day of the sun, the day of the Lord. They called the goddess of life, the Mother of God. And the world bowed, believing they had changed their faith, when all they changed were the names of their gods. You place your hand on the wall, seeing the old paint crack apart. Beneath it glows the faded gold of the sun, rays spreading from the woman's hands. The smell of hot wax and dust makes you dizzy, as though everything around you is turning past and present folding together. Voices echo faintly, a chant without words. Not a hymn, but an ancient song, its rhythm, a breath, a heartbeat, a drum. It is the sound of an old fertility rite, where people did not beg God, but thanked the earth. I whisper, soft, almost wistful. In those festivals, no one knelt. They danced, they laughed, they lived with the divine unafraid. But the Church could not allow that. They needed a world that knew how to kneel. You look upward, to the ceiling arch carved with overlapping circles, once symbols of the union between heaven and earth. Now, the centre where they met has been chiselled away. In its place stands the cross. My tone deepens. The cross was not the first holy symbol. It once marked the 4 seasons, the 4 directions, the 4 elements. But then, they nailed a man to it and made all of humanity believe that suffering was the only path to God. You hear droplets falling from the ceiling, each one like the ticking of time, counting backward to the moment when everything was made sacred by decree. I continue. From the 4th century onward, the Church gathered folk legends and rewrote them. The moon goddess became the symbol of weakness, the harvest goddess, the image of gentle virtue. The male deities were labelled demons. Everything outside their reach became heresy. In the faint glow, the wall carvings are nearly erased, but a few words remain. Daemon est Deus inversus, the devil is God inverted. I pause, then speak. They did not create evil, they only renamed the light. You inhale deeply, the chill cutting through your skin. Every word I speak hums in your mind, like a forbidden scripture. The candlelight flares, revealing a small statue in the corner, the Virgin and Child, serene and soft. But as the light shifts, the statue's shadow stretches across the wall, not of the Virgin, but of a woman holding the sun in her hands, hair loose, eyes fierce, wings unfurled. The shadow grows, filling the crypt. I whisper, clear as truth. They called her the Virgin, to make the world forget she was once a goddess. Silence falls. You look again, the statue is ordinary once more. But your heartbeat no longer follows its old rhythm. In your mind, images blur together. Goddess and saint, light and sin, freedom and submission. And you understand this is not the story of mythology. This is the story of mankind, of how we learned to believe only in what we were allowed to, instead of what we felt. I finish, softly, like the final breath of a dying flame. The church triumphed, not through scripture, but through memory. They never erased the old gods. They only changed their names. And humanity, for centuries, has knelt before different names, but worshipped the same fear. The candle dies. In that darkness, you no longer see statues or walls, only the faint warmth beneath your feet, the heartbeat of the ancient mother still alive beneath all the stone and all the lies. Have you ever wondered why the birth of Christ falls on the same day as the ancient festival of the sun? A question that seems harmless until it's placed in the right spot, like a blade sliding between the stones of faith. Christmas, December 25th, the day said to be the birth of Christ, the coming of divine light into darkness. But thousands of years before anyone had ever heard the name Jesus, people lit fires on that very night to celebrate the return of the sun Sol Invictus, the unconquered Sunday. I speak, my voice low and close, as if whispering just behind you. On that day, people didn't pray in churches. They stood outside, in snow and mist, raising their hands to the first sunrise after the longest night. They didn't beg. They gave thanks because the light had come back. You look at the candle in your hand, the flame trembling against the wall, and realize every fire ever lit by human hands meant the same thing: to warm, to illuminate, to remind us that darkness is only temporary. So what happened that turned gratitude into salvation? The answer lies in how history was rewritten line by those who understood the human mind better than anyone else. My voice deepens. In the 4th century, when Constantine chose Christianity as the faith of his empire, he understood one thing: you can't erase old beliefs, you can only rename them. And so, they fused two things that had never been one: the sun and the sun. December 25th, the date when, in Egypt, they celebrated the rebirth of Horus, the son of Isis, when in Rome they honored Mithras, born from stone, bringer of light to mankind. Now all those stories were merged and given a single name: Natalis Christi, the birth of the Saviour. You inhale deeply, cold air brushing your neck, yet warmth stirs in your chest, as if layers of ash were being blown away to reveal an older memory of humankind. I continue. The old festivals, Saturnalia, Yule, the solstice, were once days of freedom, of laughter, of love. But they were turned into prayer, repentance, sermons on original sin. You see it in your mind. Crowds draped in fur, dancing around fire, singing, tossing bread and wine into the sky. Then it fades, replaced by lines of people kneeling in cold cathedrals, hands clasped, eyes shut, lips whispering please. Firelight replaced by candlelight, life replaced by ritual. I whisper, when did we forget that the sun never asked for offerings? It rises, whether someone watches or not. The wind moans through the cracks of the crypt, shadows shift across the walls. Is it the flicker of the flame, or the shapes of ancient souls returning to hear their song again? On the wall, circles are carved, the symbol of the solar cycle, but over them, someone has drawn a cross. The chisel marks overlap, the battle of two worlds, one of endless circles, one of fixed lines. You touch the carving, the stone smooth beneath your skin, worn by centuries of hands that wondered the same thing. Why must joy walk beside fear? Why was worshipping the sun deemed sinful, while kneeling in darkness became holy? My tone softens, like a voice cradling a dream. They couldn't extinguish the fire, so they claimed it. They couldn't erase the sun, so they gave it a new name, the light of God. And humanity forgot that the light once belonged to everyone, not to a church. You look up at the vaulted ceiling, where the candlelight reflects off carved circles like the sun shining through layers of stone. For a moment, you glimpse figures followers of the old sun, standing in firelight, hand in hand, not kneeling, not weeping. A young woman looks up, the glow catching her eyes, like mirrors of the sky. She smiles a simple ancient smile, one that needs no permission to believe. The vision fades, leaving only warmth in your chest. I speak, firm and low. They say December 25th is the day Christ was born. But maybe it's the day free faith died. You don't know when my voice became the same rhythm as your heartbeat. The crypt is no longer cold. The smell of wax, smoke and stone blends into something older. The scent of campfires, of those first winter nights when humanity learned to make fire and chase away the dark. You sit down, setting the candle before you. Its small flame trembles, lighting the wall where words are carved. Sol est Christus, et Christus est Sol. The sun is Christ, and Christ is the Sunday. But beneath that, someone has written in black ink, you don't have to choose. The light is in all things. I whisper, softly, almost tender. Maybe God and the sun were always the same, both names for one truth. That light returns, no matter how long the night. And if that's true, you don't need to kneel. You don't need to pray. You only need to open your eyes. The candle flares once, then dies. In the darkness, you still see light, not from flame, but from behind your closed eyes. A warmth, ancient and primal, the same light humanity once called God and once called the Sunday. You lean down, the candle in your hand trembling like a dying soul, its light flickering across the rough stone floor before the altar. Something feels wrong. The stone here is different from the rest, flatter, smoother, with a thin crack running across it. When you touch it, a chill seeps out from below, heavy and damp, like the breath of a room that has been asleep for centuries. I speak, my voice slow and deep. Not everything beneath the altar is holy. You brush away the thick layer of dust and ash, revealing a small, triangular keyhole, ancient but intact. Beside it, faint words are carved, non omnes dormiunt in lumine. Not all sleep in the light. You search around and find a broken piece of metal nearby. When you fit it into the slot and twist, there's a soft click, and the stone slab shifts slightly, as if taking its first breath after being buried for ages. A thick stench of mold rises up, mixed with wax and rust, making you dizzy. The candle flickers wildly as your shadow spills down into the narrow passage below a stairway, descending into total darkness. I whisper, almost brushing your ear. If you want to know what they hid, this is where. You take a deep breath and step down. Each stone step is ice cold, worn and hollowed, proof that others have walked this path before. Your footsteps echo softly, doubling back, as if someone were walking beside you. Drops of water fall rhythmically in the distance. Moisture clings to your skin, and in the darkness, you hear a faint murmur like someone reciting broken prayers. You reach the final step. The candlelight reveals a smaller chamber, tighter, sealed. In its center stands a low stone table, covered in soaked parchment and cracked leather. The ink has bled, the words blurred, but it's clear this isn't scripture. These are handwritten notes, Latin mixed with circular symbols, triangles, and drawings of human figures surrounded by flame. One sheet, thicker than the rest, lies at the center, its title in dark black ink, De Secunda Illuminatio, the Second Awakening. I let out a hoarse, weary chuckle. They said there was only one resurrection, but these writings speak of another one meant for those who stopped waiting for miracles. You turn the page, reading the first lines. When man understands that light resides within himself, he no longer needs the promise of heaven. But those who hold power fear this, so the rite was buried. Below, a diagram shows the ritual, a large circle divided into 4 parts. At its center, the same eye symbol you saw carved into the wall. Beside it, a handwritten note. The eye opens not toward heaven, but toward the heart. You feel your heartbeat falter, as if the words are not written, but whispered from within your chest. I murmur, this ritual isn't for the devout. It's for the ones who lost faith. You keep reading, though the ink fades and the text breaks apart. Still, some words remain. 3 days in silence. The flame within, not without. When the heart opens, the light passes through the blood. Your hands tremble. The wet paper smells sharp and heavy, not just of age, but of iron, of rust or blood. On the edge of one sheet, a dark fingerprint, dried brown, smudged as if written by someone bleeding. You lift the candle higher, and the light catches the wall behind the table etched with the same symbols as the pages. But in the center stands a larger carving, a figure seated cross-legged, hands upon the chest, eyes wide open, with rays of light carved out from the sternum, deep as knife cuts. Beneath it reads, Illuminatio secunda, the light returns. I speak slowly, each word pressing into the air. That is what they called awakening, not salvation from above, but the knowing that man himself is light. When one attains it, he no longer fears, no longer kneels. You look around and notice a small wooden box half buried in the corner. Inside, an old oil lamp cracked and a folded note. You open it and read the trembling words, likely the last written by someone's hand. We have seen the light for the second time, but the church called it the devil. The chill spreads from your fingertips to your shoulders. The air thickens. The candle wavers, your shadow stretching long across the wall, merging with the carved figure of the awakened one. For a fleeting moment, you swear the carving breathes, the stone chest rising faintly, and the eye in its chest glows with the reflection of your candle. My voice grows deeper, but it's no longer just mine, it's the room itself speaking through me. They never wanted mankind to remember that he was once divine, because once he remembers, no one will kneel again. You stumble backward, nearly snuffing out the flame. In that brief darkness, a whisper leaks from the walls, not Latin, not scripture, but the voices of those who came before, layered together. We have seen. We have awakened. The candle flares weakly, catching your reflection in its trembling light, not firelight, but the glow inside your pupils. A drop of wax falls onto the page, revealing hidden words beneath the stain. The second light does not descend from heaven, it rises from the place where darkness begins. I whisper, softly, almost like a farewell. When you leave this place, speak of it to no one. They will call you heretic. But if one night, in a dream, you open your eyes in the dark, don't be afraid. It's only the light, coming back again. They called it heresy, because it taught man to become God. The sentence echoes in your mind, from nowhere and everywhere at once, like the voice of someone who once stood here, whispering through the same breath you now breathe. The crypt grows so silent you can hear your heartbeat slow, heavy, no longer in rhythm with fear, but with something deeper, something calling from within. The candle in your hand contracts, then flares bright. The sudden light reveals the opposite wall, rows of half-erased carvings, overlapping circular symbols, and at the center, one phrase untouched. Homo Deus est, sed obliviscitur. Man is God, but he has forgotten. I speak, my voice deep as stone. That was the first and only sin by their reckoning. Not that man wanted to be like God, but that man once was, and dared to remember. You shiver, feeling as if your body remembers a secret your mind has been forced to forget. The carved lines pulse faintly, glowing amber with the reflection of candle flame. You see etched figures kneeling before an altar, but none wear halos. Instead, each bears a small open eye on the forehead, the same symbol you've seen before, yet now alive, staring inward. I continue, softer now, almost mournful. The church feared this, because if every soul could find divinity within, no one would need sermons, no one would need forgiveness, no one would fear punishment. And without fear, they would lose control. You hear a distant bell toll, whether from above or from inside your mind. You can't tell. Each chime feels like a warning, slow and hollow, fading like a breath. You look around, handwritten pages scatter the floor, soaked and stuck together like dead moths in rain. One lies open before you, the writing jagged and trembling, as if scrawled in haste. We are not allowed to believe in ourselves. They call it pride, but it is their fear. A chill brushes your neck, like someone standing too close. But when you turn, only your shadow greets you, and in that shadow, you swear there's another eye opening on its brow. The air thickens, alive with unseen attention. I whisper, my voice blending with the room's faint breath. The first ones who practiced the second awakening were caught, hanged, burned. But as the fire rose, they didn't scream. They laughed. Because when the flame touched their skin, They realized what others never would, that fire outside can't kill the light within. You pick up another scrap, the ink washed thin, the words visible only when you tilt the candle. When man realizes he is light, darkness loses its right to exist. The chamber is no longer dark. Though your candle remains small, the walls now shimmer faintly, as if thousands of carved eyes are opening, watching you, through you. None of them threaten. Their gaze feels calm, like recognition. My voice echoes, closer now, not distant, but beside you, each word heavy as stone. They called it heresy, because it needed no church. They called it sin, because it needed no forgiveness. They called it the devil, because it needed no God to exist. Your hands tremble not from fear, but from the strange heat rushing through your veins. Every heartbeat sounds like a knock, opening hidden doors of memory, not yours, but of those who came before. Visions flash, figures in rough robes sitting around a fire, eyes wide, mouths moving in silent chant. At the center, a woman with long hair and bright eyes holds the stone eye symbol. She speaks one line, and though you don't know the language, your soul understands. We do not ask for life, we are life. You blink, returning to the present, sweat cold down your back. The candle still burns, dimly, and your shadow on the wall has split, one kneeling, one standing. I ask, my voice like wind, which one are you? You stay silent. But in that silence, something shifts. A faint cracking sound, RKK, RKK, spreads across the wall. Hairline fractures bloom from the carved eye, glowing faintly alive. You realize, perhaps those burned, buried, branded as heretics never vanished. They became the light trapped in stone, waiting for someone brave enough to open their eyes again. I murmur, soft as confession. Heresy is just the name power gives to freedom. You stare at the light seeping from the cracks, your hand rising of its own accord. Warmth spreads over your skin, gentle as a touch. In that instant, you no longer hear my voice, only your own, deep within, speaking clear and certain. If man is God, then fear is the last religion that must be destroyed. The light seeps out wider, hazy and beautiful, and you can't tell if you're trembling from cold or from truth. You stand still, listening to the heartbeat echoing from the stone, then realize it matches your own. And I, the storyteller, whisper one final time through the breath of the ancient dark. Be careful, for once you see that light, you can never be the one they save. You will be the one who saves yourself, and to them, that is the greatest sin. The first footsteps echoed, soft as a mist breath, yet in the dense air of the crypt they sounded so clear they made your skin crawl. Tap, 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 slow, steady, unhurried, as if whoever it was knew exactly where you stood. You hold your breath, press yourself against the cold wall, feel the damp stone seeping moisture. I speak, my voice low enough to blend with your heartbeat. Don't move. It's been here long before you came. The steps stop. Silence falls so deep you can hear your pulse pounding in your head. Then suddenly, another sound, metal grazing stone, dry and sharp, like a blade dragging across the wall. You glance toward the altar table. The parchment about the second awakening still lies open. The candlelight flickers over the words Homo Deus est you read moments ago, and in that instant, you notice the flame trembling not from wind, but because the ground itself is vibrating. Not like an earthquake, but like a slow breath from deep below. I whisper, this crypt isn't just a place of keeping, it's alive. You look down the corridor, where the darkness thickens like liquid. The footsteps return, slower now, each one followed by a dragging sound, drag, tap, drag, tap, like someone hauling something heavy behind them. A new scent hits you, rusted iron, mixed with ash and extinguished wax. Instinct tells you to step back, but your spine is already against the wall. A chill pierces through your clothes, making you shiver. The candle shakes violently, your shadow stretching across the stone. But what freezes your heart, your shadow isn't still anymore. It moves, slow, deliberate, independent of you. I speak, voice deep and resonant, no longer mine but the crypt's. It's not human. It's the memory of this place, the guardian of secrets no one may carry out. You try not to breathe, eyes locked on the wall. The figure's shape is taller than you, its arms long, its head fading into the ceiling like smoke. When the candle wavers, you glimpse a pair of eyes not round, but hollow pits that catch light like broken mirrors. And when you blink, they're gone. But the footsteps remain closer now. You retreat step by step, your hand trembling around the candle. I whisper from behind you, not a warden, the soul of one who burned, for daring to write what you just read. You flinch. The words stir a memory, the final line of the manuscript. When light is imprisoned, it seeks a body to escape. That phrase now echoes like a curse. The footsteps stop completely. Silence swells again, heavy as stone pressing down. You dare not turn your head, but from the corner of your eye, you see the candlelight dimming not from wind, but from something standing between you and the flame. A figure, translucent, smoke-like, right beside you. The cold radiates off it, locking your spine in place, goosebumps rising in waves. It leans in slowly, as if studying you, until its face is level with yours. Only inches apart, you can almost hear it breathe long, ragged, with the faint crack of stone. I rasp. Don't look into its eyes. If you do, you'll see what mustn't be seen. But it's too late. The candle flares violently, flooding the chamber, and you see it. The face has no flesh, no skin, only bone carved with Latin words across its forehead. Silentium custodi. Keeper of silence. Its mouth opens, not with a voice, but with a rush of air, a chorus of 100 whispers layered together, reciting the same forbidden prayers you've just uncovered. You stumble back. The candle falls, rolls, and dies. The crypt plunges into absolute darkness. But the only light left now seeps from the walls themselves, thousands of engraved symbols glowing faintly blue-green, like phosphorescent bone. And within that ghostly light, the figure doesn't vanish. It steps backward, dissolving into the wall, breaking apart into streams of pale fire that crawl through the cracks like veins carrying blood back to a heart. I whisper over your uneven breath. Everyone who enters here must face it. It is the gate. If you fear, you stay. If you're silent, you pass. You stand frozen, heart racing. The crypt stills again. You kneel, pick up the extinguished candle, and strike a spark. Flame returns. Everything is normal, no shadow, no blue light. But on the floor before the altar, a new footprint gleams wet, as if someone had just stood there moments ago. You touch it ice cold. And beneath the altar, a new line has been carved that wasn't there before. If light does not fear the dark will serve it. I speak softly, my voice like rusted iron, sighing. It's gone. But it left its mark in you. You look down at your hand, where a faint shimmer lingers, fine as dust. It doesn't hurt or burn, but when you close your fist, it feels like holding a tiny flame. You inhale deeply. The crypt is silent again, but not dead. Every sound, every breath feels sharper, alive. And through the pounding of your heart, you know one truth. Those footsteps will return whenever someone comes too close to the truth. The candle is nearly gone, just a trembling pillar of light fighting the wind. You bend down, carefully picking up the last intact page among the crumbling sheets. The ink has bled, the letters slanting and broken, but one line remains horrifyingly clear. Confessio. The church created hell not to punish, but to rule. You read it aloud without realizing it, and for a moment, the crypt seems to answer with a dry echo, the sound of iron chains dragging across stone. I speak, my voice low, no longer a narration but a judgment. Hell was never found in the first teachings of Christ. It was written later by those who needed a weapon. You lift the candle, its light flickering against the wall behind the altar. There, a mural emerges buried beneath layers of limewash, but the carvings underneath still faintly visible. No fire, no demons, no chains, only a vast throne set in darkness, surrounded by hundreds kneeling with eyes covered and hands clasped in prayer. Above them, carved in ancient Greek, Basileia Phobou, the kingdom of fear. I whisper, soft as wind. Once, people believed the soul dissolved into light after death. No punishment. No damnation. But a world without fear cannot be ruled. So they built a place called hell not beneath the earth, but inside the mind. You glance around and see other sheets. written in different hands, confessions from many voices. One says, "We were ordered to teach that eternal fire awaits those who defy God, but in truth, it was meant to keep them on their knees." Another writes, "We could not make them believe in God unless they feared him." And the last, trembling line, likely from the scribe himself, "I saw the carvings burn the first naming of hell, not in scripture, but in counsel. A chill crawls down your spine. The crypt is so quiet you can hear the blood pulsing in your ears." Each page feels like a shard of buried truth, that hell was never a place to which humans were damned, but an invisible chain to keep them from ever standing up. I continue, voice steady as a confessional rhythm. Those who created hell understood that fear is the purest form of faith. Because when you fear, you kneel by yourself, confess by yourself, and hand over your soul willingly. You unfold another page, the handwriting sharper, not the hand of someone afraid. Hell is the illusion of control. No fire burns man after death, only the flames they light inside their own minds while alive. You read the line again and again, to be sure you're not imagining it. Beneath it, the symbol of the eye but inverted. The pupil faces downward, and within it sits a throne. You understand now they reversed the meaning of light. Light no longer meant awakening, but surveillance. I murmur, heavy with sorrow. When light becomes a tool of control, darkness becomes the only freedom left. You shudder. The words remind you of the footsteps, the faceless figure from before. Perhaps the guardian was not a demon, but the soul of one who discovered the truth condemned to eternal silence. The candle flickers, its light trembling against the opposite wall. And there, through the wavering glow, more lines emerge written in dried brown. Blood or ink, you can't tell. Punishment never existed, only blind belief. You step back, gripping the candle tighter. My voice drifts, fading like it's coming from the stone itself. Do you hear it? Hell isn't beneath your feet. It's in every word that made you afraid. Every sin they named is just a door locking away your inner light. You look up to the ceiling, the candle smoke spirals into a dark vortex. You imagine centuries of people staring at it, believing it led down into the abyss. But now, with the candle's glow, you notice a tiny inscription carved backward at the top of the swirl. Lux in vertice est. The light is at the top. No one was ever cast down. They were simply forced to look in the wrong direction. My voice trembles now, not from fear, but from rage. They built prisons to hold the souls unafraid of death. They called it hell. They painted demons to hide the truth that hell is just the image of man stripped of freedom. You see on the altar a large, half-burned parchment. The first line, written in a shaking hand, reads, "If God is love, then why must fear be the gate to reach him?" Your throat tightens. Beneath it are annotations from others, like a hidden debate among the secret scribes. One writes, "Fear is the path." Another replies, "No, fear is the door they lock to keep us inside." And finally, a line twice the size of the rest, spanning half the page. "When mankind stops fearing, hell collapses." I speak softly, but with the finality of truth. That is what they never wanted you to understand. Because once man stops believing in eternal fire, their power turns to ash. The crypt trembles slightly, not from quake, but as though the very walls shake at the sound of the truth reborn. A cold wind rushes through, snuffing out the candle. But in the absolute dark, you still see a faint light shimmering from the wall, letters glowing pale blue forming on their own. Hell was not made to punish, but to make mankind forget they were free. I whisper, like a farewell carried by stone. And now that you've read it, you're free. But remember, those who bring the light out of here are always called heretics. The question is, will you choose to believe in the fire, or in your own eyes? You stop. The crypt suddenly becomes so silent that even your heartbeat sounds like knocking on stone. Your breath turns to mist, curling and fading slowly in the dark. The wall in front of you gives off an unnatural cold, not the damp chill of stone, but something deeper, like it's seeping from the memory of someone who once died here. I speak, my voice low, hoarse, echoing softly like the chamber itself. You feel it, don't you? This cold isn't from the wind, it's from human ash. You reach out and touch the wall, and your palm burns numb. The surface isn't smooth, it's rough, with small hollows and fine cracks spreading like fossilized fingerprints. When you lean closer, a faint burnt smell drifts through the air, charred wood, scorched cloth, and something heavier, burnt flesh. You pull your hand back, but it's too late. A chill runs through your arm, cold enough to pierce your heart, and in that instant, you hear something faint, a sigh or a moan from behind the wall. I whisper, barely breathing. This was once where they burned the truth-tellers alive. You step back, the candle trembling in your hand, its light flickering across the stained wall. Between the blackened scorch marks, you see the faint shape of a hand human pressed deep into the stone, as if someone tried to touch the wall while the fire consumed them. Beside it, shallow scratch marks, like they were carved with fingernails. Lux mentitur. The light lies. My voice cracks slightly as I speak. Their final words. They were not heretics. They only said that God never wanted rulers. And for that, they burned. You hear your own echo fading, mixing with another sound, the faint scrape of iron against iron, far away but unmistakable. It's real, as if someone is unlocking chains in the dark. The candlelight dances on the wall, and between the cracks in the stone, you see pale shapes moving, not people, but thin white wisps twisting like breaths made visible. They have no form, only the remnants of souls left behind. I say, no one truly dies here. They were burned, but their words sank into the stone, into the smoke. And every time someone gets close to the truth, these spirits awaken not to frighten, but to remind. Someone has already paid the price. You stand still, afraid to breathe too hard. Flecks of ash drift down from the cracks above, landing softly on your shoulders. In the dim light, they shimmer like gold dust, but when they touch your skin, they turn to ice. You look down and see round burn marks across the floor, perfectly spaced remnants of the stakes. Each circle was once a place where someone stood, bound in rope, flames curling at their feet, mouths still speaking words the church called blasphemy. I whisper beside your ear. They called it purification. But how can fire purify the truth? You step toward one of the circles. The stone at its center still bears a deep fracture, as if shattered by unbearable heat. You kneel, place your hand on it, and suddenly, a voice bursts inside your head, the voice of a woman, weak but clear. I am not afraid, because I speak my own words, not theirs. You gasp, nearly dropping the candle. That whisper was no illusion. It came from beneath you, from the very place where she burned. You close your eyes, breath uneven. A vision floods your mind. A stone courtyard, rows of black-robed men, the wind screaming. In the center stands a woman with long hair, bright eyes, unflinching. The fire licking her legs, but her mouth still calm. Beside her, a man reads the verdict, his voice cold as iron. For claiming that light lives within man, you shall be purified by fire so your soul may be saved. She smiles softly and says, light cannot be burned. Only those who never see it are afraid. Then the flames roar upward. You open your eyes, sweat running cold down your face, heart pounding. The crypt is unchanged, but the opposite wall now bears a new smear of black smoke, as if the memory you just saw branded itself there. My voice, low and mournful but no longer fearful, speaks. That woman was among the first to burn, after they discovered the gospel once said, "The kingdom of God is not in heaven, but within each person." You lift the candle, its light falling on the overlapping lines carved into the walls, all scratched out, rewritten, drowned in black ink thick as blood. But one line in the middle remains clear. Veritas ardet, sed non perit. Truth burns, but does not perish. I murmur, and because it cannot die, they had to bury it deeper here. Wind slips through the cracks of the stone door, carrying with it a faint clink, like chains swaying. You glance around, the shadow on the wall doubles. One of the two shadows moves slower, half a heartbeat behind. And when you stop, it keeps walking. You no longer feel fear. You understand it isn't the shadow of a ghost, but of those who never found rest, whose final breaths became part of this stone, so their story could keep being told. My voice slows, each word falling like a prayer. When truth burns, its ashes turn to wind, and the wind finds anyone brave enough to listen. You look around. The cold fills the air again, but this time, it doesn't make you shiver. You inhale deeply. Through the smoke, you smell something else: candle wax, old earth, and faintly, lavender. A scent that doesn't belong to death, but to the living, perhaps the fragrance the condemned once lit before the fire took them, a last defiance against fear. The candle in your hand flickers, then glows brighter. The chill retreats, and the carved hands on the wall begin to glow softly, as if warmed for the first time in centuries. I whisper, a breeze through the ashes. Do you hear it? They're not crying, they're singing. You listen, and yes, somewhere within that silence, a sound rises, woven into the wind. Many voices, whispering the same phrase, not in a language you know, but with meaning unmistakable. We spoke the truth, and because of that, we are still here. Faith doesn't kill you. The fear of being forced to believe does. The sentence rings in your mind like a bell, warm and cold at once, awakening and dangerous. It doesn't come from my mouth, but seems to rise from the air itself inside the crypt where the candle has burned low, leaving only a trembling circle of light in the dense dark. You look around. The handprints on the walls are still there, but now they're no longer frightening. Each scorched mark feels like a reminder that there were once people who believed, not because they were forced, but because they had seen the truth. I speak softly, slowly, like someone who already knows your reaction. Faith was once light, but when men used it to bind others, it became a chain. When light was turned into law, it stopped being light. You step closer to the stone table where the old manuscripts still lie scattered. One of them is open, revealing a line written in dark red ink. Belief is born from courage. Religion is born from fear. You read it again and again, feeling the fragile boundary between those two words, to believe and to fear. For a moment, you remember the eyes of the woman who burned in the memory you saw before, eyes without fear, without anger, only blazing with pure conviction in what she spoke. She didn't believe to be saved. She believed because she had seen. But those who burned her, they didn't believe. They were afraid. My voice comes low, clear in every word. Fear is darkness wearing the mask of faith. And when it wears God's name, it turns men into jailers of their own souls. The candle flickers, sending a thin curl of smoke up to the ceiling. You see your shadow on the wall bent, kneeling. But when you stand upright, the shadow doesn't follow. It stays on its knees. You exhale softly and whisper, "True faith doesn't make you kneel." I say nothing. Your shadow slowly fades, melting into the layers of black smoke clinging to the stone. The crypt falls silent. Then, a faint sigh echoes from afar, followed by another voice, not mine, not yours, but of the place itself. We've knelt so long, we've forgotten knees weren't made to bow. Your throat tightens, unsure if that was real or just the echo of thousands of unanswered prayers. On the stone table, you find a small parchment roll, tied with rotting twine. You untie it carefully. The first line is written in steady hand. When faith is forced, it ceases to be faith. It becomes a tool. Below, a drawing two figures. One stands in light, hands open. The other kneels in shadow, hands clasped. Both face the same direction, but only the one standing has open eyes. I say, the first person to see God did not see him out of fear, but because they dared to look inward. You read on. The fearful will obey. The faithful will walk out of the church and hear his voice in the wind. You set the parchment down, feeling as though you've touched both a curse and a promise. Around you, the candlelight wavers across faint carvings on the wall, forming a circle like a rosary of broken prayers. In the center, one larger line, carved as if with a blade. Fides aut libertas, faith or freedom. I ask softly, if you had to choose, which would you? You don't answer, because deep down, you know they were once the same until mankind divided them. Faith was once freedom. But when faith became law, when belief was defined by fear, it became the most beautiful prison ever built. You step back, the candlelight swaying, sweeping over the ceiling where cracks in the stone form a shape like wings. Buried in darkness, yet when the light passes over them, they glint like metal once heated, now cooled. My voice slows. Someone once wrote, "When man fears God, He forgets that God created him out of love, not control. Faith is an invitation. Fear is a command. A sudden gust of wind blows through the crypt, making the candle shudder violently. Its light catches a slab of ancient stone behind you, its letters worn almost smooth. But beneath the dust, one phrase remains clear. Credere sine timor. Believe without fear. You whisper it aloud, and as the sound leaves your lips, the crypt seems to change. The cold dissolves. The air feels lighter, and from the walls, dust falls away, revealing more words, hundreds of carvings, all saying the same thing. We believed, but we did not kneel. You understand now this is not a tomb for heretics. It is a sanctuary for those who dared to believe differently, those who did not need fear to hold their faith. I speak softly, with quiet sorrow. The church feared them, because they carried within them a faith that could not be controlled, a faith that needed no church, no baptism, no forgiveness. The last flame flickers weakly, but before dying, it flares once more, bright enough to reveal every carving on the walls, every scorched hand, every half-finished face. Everything feels alive. You hear voices, hundreds, thousands speaking together, all merging into one chorus that echoes inside your head. We did not die for faith. We died because they made us fear it. When the light dies, darkness returns, but now, it doesn't feel heavy. It's quiet, gentle, like a blanket around you. I whisper, my final words like the closing of a rite. Fear is the root of every chain. When you stop fearing, you have truly believed. You close your eyes. In that darkness, you see nothing, but you feel something real, something bright deep within your chest. It isn't the candle, nor the walls, it's the soft, warm light beating with your heart. And you understand. Perhaps this is the original faith, the kind no one can teach, and no one can take away. The distant clang of metal bells echoes from somewhere above, rolling through layers of stone like the memory of an old voice. You lift your head toward the cracked ceiling, feeling as though every vibration carries a story the world tried to bury. I speak low, steady, as if reading from a scroll half-burned. They called them wars of faith. But if you look deep enough, you'll see no one ever killed for the love of God. They killed for control over the human soul. You move slowly around the crypt. On the walls, beyond the soot and ancient symbols, newer carvings appear scenes of armies on horseback bearing red crosses, swords raised high. Next to them, figures in black hoods holding torches, the mark of the Inquisition. Between the two, a single Latin line cut deep into the stone. Bellum pro scientia occulta. The war for hidden knowledge, I murmur. The Crusades, the Inquisition, the Purges, all were just different names for the same hunt, the hunt for knowledge. You look closer at the first carving. Beneath the feet of the Crusaders are scrolls, books, and circular symbols, not gold or trophies, but manuscripts. Some bear the eye, the interlocking circles, even the six-pointed star, the emblems of ancient wisdom. I continue. They burned villages and killed people, but they didn't take gold. They took books, knowledge, memory. Because the greatest threat to power isn't heresy, it's understanding that makes people unafraid. You lift a broken stone slab. On its reverse is a carving of a man hanging upside down, surrounded by Greek words, Sophia, veritas, lux interna, wisdom, truth, inner light. My voice drops, careful, as if afraid to disturb the thick silence. That man wasn't a heretic. He was one who believed God lived, not in the church, but in the human mind. And that was his greatest sin. A cold gust seeps through the cracks, carrying the smell of soot and rusted metal. For a moment, you think you hear horses, swords clashing, voices crying, Deus vult, God wills it. But now, those words sound hollow, stripped of holiness, just a war cry masking fear. I say sharply. The Crusades weren't only toward Jerusalem. They rode toward the lands of libraries, Egypt, Armenia, Byzantium. And when they arrived, they didn't search for relics, they burned books. You pick up a small charred fragment of parchment. On it is an ancient map of the world, but the lines point south, not toward the Holy Land, but toward Alexandria, home of the greatest library humanity ever built. Beneath the map, a faded note reads, Lux oxisa, sed non mortua est. The light was slain, but not dead. I go on, softer now, almost confessing. When they burned the Library of Alexandria, they said it was to cleanse the Greek heresies. But in truth, it was to erase proof that long before Scripture, mankind already knew the soul, the stars, and God in another way. You turn to the opposite wall, where another carving shows a group of people kneeling before the flames. Hooded figures pronounce judgment, while someone has etched trembling words above them. Inquisitio mentis. The Inquisition of the mind. My voice trembles faintly, heavy with sorrow. The Inquisition didn't just kill people. It killed questions. It burned those who asked if God is light, why must we fear the dark? On the wall, a black stain stretches like a crucifix. But when the candlelight touches it, you see it's no ordinary cross. The horizontal beam twists, forming the shape of a key. I say, the so-called keys to heaven were really locks on perception. They didn't open doors, they guarded them. The air thickens. The candle wavers, smoke curling upward like a spiral. You feel the cold press through your skin, not from the walls, but from memories buried within them. The wind carries distant whispers, 1,000 voices chanting backward. Veritas, libertas, lumen, truth, freedom, light. Then, silence. I speak firmly. The Inquisition was built to burn the souls that would not kneel, but the fire they lit only shone brighter in the dark. And those souls through centuries are the reason you found this place. You place your hand on the wall. Beneath the stone you feel a faint pulse, slow, deep, rhythmic. Maybe it's an illusion. Or maybe this crypt is alive, fed by the pain of thousands burned for daring to say the soul needs no priest to find God. My tone softens, like closing a chapter. From crusade to Inquisition, it's always been one long war between true light and the light they allowed. And you, by stepping here, walk the same path they once did, not to pray, but to remember. The candle fades, but doesn't die. In its trembling glow, new words emerge, letters carved not by hand, but by time itself. Those who speak in God's name fear most the soul that is free. I whisper, my voice carrying the weight of centuries. That is history's greatest paradox. Men killed to preserve belief, while God only wanted them to learn how to see. The candle flares suddenly, flooding the walls with light. Your shadow stretches long, merging with thousands of others, the silent souls of knowledge once burned, now standing again in quiet defiance. The sound of stone grinding against stone echoes slowly but surely, heavy like the breath of the crypt itself alive. You startle and turn behind you. The door, a thick slab of moss-covered rock, is closing. Inch by inch, not fast, but unstoppable. You rush toward it, slam your hands against the cold surface, the impact ringing back like an echo from the past. No gap, no way out. Only you, the dying candle, and a space that suddenly feels different. I speak, my voice slow, no longer a storyteller's tone, but the breath that fills the room. Do not be afraid. Everyone who came here heard that sound. You step back. The candle flickers, its trembling flame seeming to fear something unseen. Then you hear it a whisper, faint at first, like wind seeping through cracks in stone. But within seconds, it grows clearer, close, right beside your ear, cold and deep. Once you know the truth, no one is allowed to leave. The voice isn't human. It carries no breath, just sound carved into space, repeating across centuries, waiting for someone to listen. You back away, heart pounding, but your feet won't move. The cold rises from the ground, crawling up your ankles, your knees, wrapping around your chest. I speak again, calm but sorrowful. The door does not close to keep you in. It closes because this place opens only once for the one who dares to hear. You glance around. The faint candlelight shivers across the walls, and the carved symbols are no longer still. They tremble, blur, then begin to turn slowly on the stone surface, as if the entire crypt were a living mechanism awakening from sleep. The grinding of stone merges with a low hum, and somewhere deep below comes a sound not of pain, but of awakening. A pulse moves through the air, deep and steady, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. You step back again, but the wall behind you is ice cold. In a flash, you realize the burn marks on the walls aren't ancient. They're spreading, like black veins writing themselves into words. In the center, a Latin phrase emerges. Veritas vincit. Truth conquers, I whisper. It was the vow of those who burned. They carved it in their own blood, and when this crypt was sealed, that vow never died. The whispering returns this time, not one voice, but many. Men and women, young and old, layered together into a chilling choir. Once you know the truth, no one is allowed to leave. Your head spins, every sound swirling inside your skull. The candle flares, then dies. Darkness swallows everything. But strangely, you can still see, not with your eyes, but with something deeper, within your mind. The crypt is no longer stone, but a sea of living memory. Hundreds of spirits stand around you, encircling you in a ring of pale blue light. Each bears a mark of fire, yet their glow is gentle, warm, and in their eyes there is no hatred, only understanding. One steps forward. The face is blurred, but the voice is clear, calm. You cannot leave this place as you were. Once you've seen, you cannot return to lies. You step back, your foot hitting something. You look down a small leather book, sealed, its lock broken. You open it. Inside, no words, only a mirror. The mirror doesn't show your reflection. It shows the light spreading through the crypt, the faces behind you. As you stare deeper, the images shift. You see crusaders burning villages, priests reading death sentences, flames swallowing the innocent, and above all, a throne. On it, a man in white robes bows in prayer, holding chains in his hands. My voice returns, heavy as a bell toll. That is the root of all power, to turn faith into fear, to turn a free soul into a docile one. And you, by walking down here, have touched the real bloodline of history. The wind moves again, but this time it's warm. It carries the scent of wax, ash, and faintly of old iron and blood. You feel the crypt breathing, each inhale pulling you closer to its heart. The spirits around you begin to fade, melting into the walls. Their collective voices rise, merging with the deep hum, filling the space with one final truth. There is no exit from truth, for it is everywhere. The wall ahead of you splits not into a door, but a narrow crack of white light. You step forward instinctively, but as your skin meets the glow, a chill runs through your body, not pain, but a flood of visions. You see yourself standing in a medieval square, flames rising red, crowds screaming, a bound figure at the stake. You see trembling hands clasped in prayer, mouths whispering, "Forgive us, Lord," as the fire climbs their throats. You see the judge's eyes empty. Then everything collapses back into darkness, and my voice returns, far but real. They didn't burn people to protect faith. They burned them to keep control of the story. You open your eyes. The crypt is silent. The door is shut tight. Not a glimmer of light seeps through, but you aren't afraid. Because deep inside, you know you carry a fragment of that old flame, not to destroy, but to illuminate what they tried to bury. My voice, now faint, like someone speaking from the other side of stone, says, "When this door opens again, you will no longer be the seeker of truth. You will be its bearer. But remember, truth does not set people free. It only ensures they can never sleep again." Then silence. The crypt stills. Only your heartbeat remains slow, heavy, steady, echoing in rhythm with the breathing of the ancient stone. And in that perfect quiet, you hear, one last time, faint but clear, the first whisper repeating, "Once you know the truth, no one is allowed to leave." But this time, it doesn't sound like a warning. It sounds like a welcome. No more candlelight, no more cold breath. Only a strange stillness. Not the stillness of death, but of waiting. You stand in the dark, your eyes adjusted, and realize it's no longer dark. There is a faint light, like mist, emanating from your own body, softly reflecting against the stone walls. I speak, calm, as if I already knew the ending. Light never disappears, it only changes where it lives. You look around, the crypt has changed. No more burned hands, no trembling carvings, only smooth stone, as if everything had been cleansed. Every step you take, the echo no longer feels cold, but deep, resonant, like the sound of the earth breathing. On the wall, the light fades, then reveals a large carving, a door, but with no hinges, no lock. In its center, one Latin phrase, veritas non librabit tenisi tuas ipsa. The truth will not set you free unless you are it. You whisper the words, and they echo back in your own voice, but it sounds as if hundreds are reading with you. The crypt trembles lightly, dust falls from the ceiling, and in that instant, you understand. There is no way out but through this. I speak again, slow and steady. Truth does not live in books, nor in churches, nor in words. It lives within the one who dares to see. You have seen. You are no longer the seeker. From the wall before you, light spreads like water, rippling across the floor. In that light, images begin to appear, not past, not present, but the memory of the world itself. Those who burned, monks rewriting history, temples destroyed, books erased. But beside them are other faces, those who kept the truth alive by telling it, painting it, carving it into the dark. A woman holding a quill dipped in blood, writing on a wall, "We will be forgotten, but the truth will remember us." An old monk hiding a manuscript inside a saint's statue, whispering, "No one owns the light, but anyone can carry it." All of it merges, flowing together like the current of shared memory. You stand in the center of the crypt, light surrounding you. No fear, no boundaries. I say softly, warmer than ever. Everything you've seen, everything you know, will vanish if you stay silent. That is how they let silence live forever. You feel something changing within you, your heartbeat no longer anxious, but ancient, steady, like a drum. The blood in your veins grows warm, and light spreads from your chest, like a lamp lit from within. The crypt mirrors that light, reflecting it across every wall, every stone, revealing what you hadn't seen before. Hundreds, thousands of names carved into the rock, small, precise, covering the walls from floor to ceiling. Each name a soul once burned, once forgotten, once called heretic, but now all of them shine. Their light blends with yours, and you understand they were never trapped. They were waiting for someone to see them so they could live again. I whisper, like the breath of the crypt itself. They never wanted you to carry this. But if you leave, remember, don't tell it as a story. Live it. You lift your eyes to the ceiling. The stone slowly cracks open, revealing a faint light above, not sunlight but pale moonlight seeping through the dust. The door that once closed now opens, not by any hand, but by the breath of the crypt itself. You walk toward it. With every step, the ground feels softer, warmer. When you touch the light, a chill passes through you, then melts away, as if your body has been cleansed of every trace of fear. You climb upward. Light floods your vision, blinding. You shut your eyes tight, and when you open them, you are no longer in the crypt. Before you lies a grey sky, thick clouds, cold wind, and a ruined monastery, wooden doors rotted, a fallen cross leaning. Yet the air around you is different, no howling wind, only a strange calm, as if the world itself is holding its breath. I speak, no longer distant, but near, echoing inside your mind. You brought it out. Don't let it sleep again. You turn the door to the crypt is gone. Only flat earth remains, covered in ash and wild grass. In your hands, the small leather book still rests, but the mirror inside now reflects only the sky. No faces, no past. Only you, standing in the world, between what is known and what no one yet dares to say. I speak one last time, my voice low, like an echo from far away. Truth is not meant to be kept, but to be lived. And when you carry it, remember the world does not need preachers, it needs the brave. You close the book, and as you do, the light within fades, but the warmth remains. On its leather cover, faint letters begin to appear, not Latin, not Greek, but in the tongue of the present. Every generation has a flame to keep. You breathe deeply, lifting your face to the wind. It's cold, but clean. In the distance, the ruined church still stands, its broken roof framing the sky. You notice how the beams of light slipping through the cracks form the shape of wings. And in that moment, you understand, truth doesn't need to be believed. It only needs to be lived. I whisper, barely audible, like wind sliding past your ear. This story ends when you leave the crypt, but it begins again in anyone who dares to open their eyes without fear. You smile not in peace, but in knowing. Silence, you realize, can be a prayer too. And then you walk away. Behind you, the wind sweeps through the ashes, carrying a sound so faint only those who have heard through darkness would know it. Once you know the truth, no one is allowed to leave, but no one needs to stay anymore. If you're still here, it means your heart is beating in rhythm with the stories of the night. Hit subscribe, and let's keep walking together into the next journey, where every shadow hides a secret waiting to be awakened. For now, dim the lights, let your mind drift, and let sleep take you away. Sleep peacefully because tonight, the world is still whispering.